most importantly of all, a new YouTube. One that threatens to wipe out huge chunks of content and content creators that you know and love and have been watching since you were young. Fire!
So what is all this Coppa stuff about anyway? Well, it's short for the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, aka Coppa, of 1998, and since Americans made or own basically all the websites that you're aware of in the English-speaking side of the internet, this law applies to most of the internet that you use. But I do also want to note that the FTC asserts that this law applies to all online services directed towards Americans, not just websites that Americans made or own, which is how they got ByteDance, the owner of TikTok, to pay a settlement of $5.7 million over this, despite it being a Chinese company. So what is this law actually about? Well, it defines how you can collect and use data of kids under 13. Essentially, anyone under the age of 13 can only give out personal information with their parents' permission that must be verifiable by the website. The website must have a privacy policy explaining this, and it further details how the site has to protect the privacy and safety of those kids. Since the parent permission thing can be kind of a burden, these websites tend to just not let people under the age of 13 register for websites at all because of this. That's why if you sign up for YouTube, Facebook, Reddit, etc., they'll either ask you your age or they'll say somewhere like, those under 13 can't make an account by continuing you agree that you're 13 or older, and they might say, click this checkbox to make sure of this or something like that. Most infamously, YouTube got sued for violating Coppa in 2019, which has led to you having to select whether you are uploading a video for kids or not. By YouTube making you do this, it's complying better with the law. And when your video is flagged as being made for kids, or you mark it as being made for kids, it goes to YouTube Kids, and on YouTube Kids, it's very limited what you could do there. You can't make comments, and there's a lot of other stuff that you can't do on there because it would be collecting data on those under 13. As a bit of current news on this, actually, there's a bill in Congress right now called Coppa 2.0, with the full name being Children and Teens Online Privacy Protection Act, and is meant to amend the original Coppa and add provisions for those between 13 and 16 years old inclusive. I only bring this up because it seems to be a bipartisan bill in that it passed the Senate with 91 votes to 3, so it seems like both parties want it, and if it passes the House and President Trump signs it, it would be law. So we'll see if we're getting a second Coppa. Stay tuned. Kevin MacLeod. This is our very first entry that's the name of a person, and you might not even know who this is unless you're very familiar with the YouTube landscape. But if you go back to the iceberg, you might actually see that it's labeled purple, which means it's for music, and that might give you a clue. Born in 1972, Kevin MacLeod is the creator of half the music you've probably heard as background music on YouTube. I am not joking. I'm playing one of his songs right now for this entry. Glenn Kenny of the New York Times says he is arguably the most prolific composer that you've never heard of, although it's very likely you've heard his music before. Heck, he's so well known for this, there was a documentary made about him called Royalty Free: The Music of Kevin MacLeod. That title of the movie should clue you in on why he's so important. If you don't know, copyright law is a mess and has led to YouTube's Content ID system, which will automatically scan every video uploaded and compare it to a giant database of registered copyright material, including and especially music. If you want to go into that rabbit hole, I suggest this video by Lemon that'll explain why YouTube cares so much about copyright, and then these 3 videos by him. It's a series about how much of a mess it is on YouTube. And finally, this video from Tom Scott that shows it's not just on YouTube that it's a mess, it's actually the law that's causing all these problems. All of that will be linked in the description. All of this chicanery about copyright makes content creators need to find some kind of music to use that they don't have to shell an arm and a leg out for a stupid license or get copyright claimed, with like I have, or even worse, copyright struck. And it just so happens, Kevin MacLeod is one such person who can provide such music. His website, incompetech.com, and I'll link it in the description, has hundreds upon hundreds of songs you can use without needing a license or permission. You do need to give him credit as described on his website here, or you can buy a license and you don't have to give him credit, but that's just one option. I would give credit if I were you, especially a small creator. I myself both put credit on screen, but for the more detailed credit, I put it in the description on a link you can click to a paste bin, and I've been a bit more diligent now with showing the proper credit. And if you prefer not to go on his website, the YouTube audio library has all of these on there. You just go to YouTube Studio, click Audio Library, and you'll see thousands upon thousands of songs you can click from. And if you filter his name, Kevin MacLeod, you'll see hundreds of them there. You can just test them and download them right there. While there are a lot of people who are doing it these days, Kevin MacLeod has just done a lot of these songs, and his music is just that well known, and there's that much variety, then kudos to him and all those who do this. They are the true unsung heroes of YouTube. Sponsorships. This is an entry that's very broad, but I feel like the creators of the Iceberg had one very specific thing in mind, much less broad than what this term actually is. But first I'll at least start with the broad idea. Online sponsorships are when a company spends money or gives a free product to somebody or to a company in exchange for something. Sometimes it's for pushing a post or posts to the top of a feed like Google does with its search engine, in which sponsored content is at the top of the search inquiry, even if it wouldn't have been the top normally. Sometimes it's to feature a post in a special way, like on someone's social media feed, even if it wouldn't normally be there, which happens on places like Facebook, LinkedIn, or Twitter. Another big kind would be influencer sponsorships, but I described this in the last video. Just look at the entry for influencers to see that. Anyway, the thing that the creators of this iceberg most definitely meant are YouTube sponsorships. I feel like I shouldn't even need to explain this to you guys here, because you are on YouTube and they're everywhere, and they're a good way for a creator to diversify their income, especially with ad revenue not being the most consistent revenue stream out there. This would be a good segue to give you an example of one, but you know, I'm a small creator and all.
This is where I'd put it.
Sponsorship.
If I had one!
But since I'm a small creator and all, I can be real with the audience and say that on top of ad block, YouTube is much more usable if you have an extension called Sponsor Block. When a video is new, those with this extension mark the points in which the sponsorships are, and then others will have that segment skipped automatically based on the timing that it's set. It has other features like skipping intros, non-music segments in music videos, long tangents in the video, filler, etc. Can't imagine browsing YouTube without it. But hey, no shade to those who have sponsorships, they gotta make a living, and while most sponsorships on here are, you know, whatever, there are some legitimately bad ones, like BetterHelp, which is an entry for later, or Established Titles, which is an entry for later. Man, I hope I didn't just bungle my chance with an actual sponsor with recommending Sponsor Block on here. Whatever, it's gonna be a while before I get one of those anyway, if ever. Dinosaur Game. Dinosaur Game, also called Chrome Dino or T-Rex Runner, is a game you would play in the Google Chrome web browser. It's one of those built-in Easter eggs that Google loves so much, and typically you'd need to be offline to access it, but if you want to play it while online, I'll link this video in the description on how you can do that. Now, I use Firefox, so I can't play this without downloading Chrome. However, there are a couple websites that host this game unofficially that you can use if you don't have Chrome that I'll link in the description. The gameplay, as you can see on screen, is very simple. You play as a dinosaur running to the right automatically in a desert, and you need to jump over cacti or else the game is over, and you try to see how far you can go and get a high score, and later on they even added pterodactyls as an obstacle, for example. It's a very simple game. There have been a couple occasions in which it was altered, like the 4th birthday in which there was a cake and hat added, there was a Tokyo Olympics Easter egg. Heck, in 2024, Google allowed you to AI prompt sprites that could be added to the game called Gen Dino, but that was discontinued. So why is this game here? So, as a fact, even as a Firefox user, I gotta admit, Chrome is the web browser that 2/3 of people use, and it's the big one, so it has a lot of potential eyes on it. And according to the 2018 Google article here, they had 270 million games played every month, which is insane, and which has gotta be higher now, right? And as you can expect, it got talked about a lot, as you can see here. There were mods to the game too, like this that allowed weapons and drugs, and it was even featured on The Simpsons as a couch gag, which should be enough to tell you that something has hit the normie zeitgeist, right? Tumblr. Tumblr is a microblogging social media site founded by David Karp and Marco Arment in 2007, then was bought by Yahoo in 2013, then by Verizon in 2017, and finally bought by Automatic Inc. in 2019, who owns it to this day. You know who Yahoo and Verizon are, but if you don't know Automatic, they're the ones who made and own WordPress.com, which is interesting. Anyway, Tumblr is a site on the complete opposite side of the internet than I enjoyed during its heyday, so similar to the Pinterest entry, I have basically no knowledge of how this worked until now, and I really only knew it for 3 things before this. One, since I'm a 4chan user for a very long period of time, I'm aware of all the spats these two sites have had back and forth. And if you're curious and want an example, here's a well-known one that Internet Historian covered. I'll link to it in the description, where Tumblr poked the beehive and got raided, which is pretty funny. 2, I knew it for the disastrous and hilariously bad convention Tumblr did, well, Tumblr users, not Tumblr itself, called DashCon, but there's an entry about that later. And finally 3, I knew that in December 2018 there was a pretty notorious policy change in which porn was banned, which was apparently one of the main uses of this site, and while apparently the rules have changed since then, this did irreparable harm to the website's popularity and relevance, though it seems like it was already on the decline as shown here. While the decline had already begun, it seems like, the porn ban is sometimes considered the symbolic decline of the site, and some would say that Twitter and Reddit became more of the place for Tumblr users to congregate these days. And by that I mean a very, very, very socially progressive user base. I mean, it's such a notable feature of the Tumblr user base that the first fucking paragraph on Wikipedia notes this, and them being like this was practically all I knew about the user base. There are a couple very notable controversies, one of them being Bone Ghazi, which is a hilarious name, but is an entry for later. One that I'll talk about right now was when, in 2015, the Tumblr user base bullied a fan artist so much that they tried to commit suicide. What was this bullying over? You see, the show Steven Universe, which is a pretty Tumblr core show, I think a lot of people would agree, and it had some fat characters, and this artist drew a bit of fan art in which one character was of a more normal weight. That's it. This is the stuff they bullied this artist near suicide over, both on Tumblr and on DeviantArt. I mean, just read some of the comments here. Just look at these. The ones who did this are nuts, and they also went after her for other art that they found before this and got offended by other things too, but that's the general gist. I mean, I don't know, I presume this is the type of person who would get like this over fan art of a character at a normal weight on Tumblr/DeviantArt.
I get dressed in the morning, I'm triggered. I take a shower, I'm triggered. I get in the car, I'm triggered. I go for a walk, I'm triggered. I leave my house, I'm triggered. I sit in my room all day, I'm triggered. I look at my thin, beautiful sisters and I'm triggered, and I just can't get away from it.
I still can't get over that someone was bullied that hard over fan art that they tried to commit suicide. Tumblr is wild, man. Anyway, to move away from the controversies a moment, Tumblr is a website where you can make short-form blog content that can have multimedia, and if people like it, they can like, reblog, and comment, which are collectively called notes. If you want a more in-depth guide on how Tumblr works, I'll link an article. Let's move on. Try not to laugh plus similar challenges. So this term, try not to laugh, is likely a meme morph of a very different old meme, that you laugh, you lose. This is actually one I remember from back in the day, and according to this archived Encyclopedia Dramatica page that I'll link in the description, it started on B. And an early archived form of it comes from this website, Ultimate Metal, that I'll also link in the description. It seems like what Encyclopedia Dramatica says is correct for the very early days. You post a humorous image that is also very offensive, and anybody who laughs at the images loses, since, you gotta be a horrible person to have laughed at it, or something like that. I think, though, that this connotation changed as you laugh, you lose threads on 4chan. We're not like this when I started browsing, like in 2011, 2012 or so. It just became where you were trying your best not to laugh in a thread, and that was really it. Heck, these actually still exist today. If you go to the WorkSafe GIF board, WSG, and you search for YLYL, which is short for You Laugh, You Lose, you'll still find various threads about them. But I caution, these are painfully unfunny. This trend spawned many similar things like You Rage, You Lose, You Nostalgia, You Lose, etc. Now, having explained You Laugh, You Lose, you've got to understand that this type of thing was also starting to appear on YouTube. For example, this video released in 2007 called Try to Watch This Without Laughing or Grinning, that I'll link to an archive of in the description, which is seemingly the first time this exact term was used on YouTube that we know of, but the actual video was not archived. Though people are saying it's a dancing stormtrooper meme, which is an entry for later. It was then later re-uploaded in 2009 and called Try Not to Laugh or Grin Dancing Stormtrooper. Then there were others released with the similar name of Try Not to Laugh or Grin. Fast forwarding a bit here, it's never not been a popular trend. I mean, tons of big YouTubers have made videos and series over it, like Markiplier, Smosh, and PewDiePie, and in his case, he has a ton of examples of other ones, like Try Not to Get Scared or Try Not to Cringe. And it wasn't just YouTube either, it also became a big Vine meme, which had a compilation uploaded on YouTube with 62 million views. I think you get the gist, and despite how popular this trend is, has anybody actually laughed at any of these videos? I'm being serious. I've seen plenty of these over the years in text, in images, and in videos. When does the funny actually start? Karens. Karen is a common name for a woman, but obviously it's used very differently these days. It refers to a woman, usually a white woman, but not always, who looks a specific way and acts entitled. Sometimes it has a racial connotation, both for Karen herself and those who she's upset with, but other times it's just the I want to speak to your manager type. The exact origin of when the name Karen became seen so negatively isn't really known, and honestly, this isn't a history iceberg, but some would point to this scene from the 2004 movie Mean Girls.
So if you're from Africa, why are you white? Oh my god, Karen, you can't just ask people why they're white.
Or there's this 2004 stand-up routine called The Friend Nobody Likes by Dane Cook.
There is one person in every group of friends that nobody fucking likes.
Where it started, this meme spread pretty far on Tumblr, Reddit, with r/fuckyouKaren being made in 2017. And a popular form of this meme was Karen being an ex-wife taking kids in a custody battle like these. There was a hashtag, and then Karen snapped. I'll show a few more general Karen memes and then wrap this up. One last thing, this doesn't seem to be a meme that people use a lot unless a Karen actually comes out. Like, people don't do this proactively, it's only used retroactively. Like, so when a Karen actually does something, then people will meme about it, instead of just making Karen memes these days. Let's move on.
Are you tired of those YouTube sponsorships? Well, I've found the solution for you. With this, you won't need to see those YouTube sponsors, or even watch YouTube videos, because you'll be so glued to today's sponsor, Raid Shadow Legends.
Released on mobile devices in 2018 and ported to PC in 2020, Raid Shadow Legends was made by an Israeli game company called Plarium, who have made a couple other mobile games like Terminator Genesis, Future War, and Vikings, War of Clans, but Raid is clearly their golden goose. Raid Shadow Legends is that infamous game you know about because everybody and their dog has been sponsored by them, except for me, of course. They sponsored enough to where there are multiple hour-long compilations of just sponsored ad reads, and this is back from 2020, so there's a lot more now. On their Twitter account, they pretty infamously claimed in 2020 that they don't sponsor anybody and only cooperate without monetary compensation. However, in a tweet from a week later, they posted a Discord message from a representative who claims the tweet was not referring to the sponsored ad reads, but was instead talking about creators who do reviews, tutorials, etc. They do pay for sponsorships, but not for content creators in a different program shown here. Whether you believe this is what they really meant or not, I'll leave that up to you. You know what's funny? Do you remember that video that I recommended you watch back in the first video during the Gotcha Life entry? You know, the one from Siggy Snake who defined gotcha for us? Well, the opening of this video starts with a great summary of Raid Shadow Legends. I'll play a clip of it here and link it into the description.
One of the most popular games to come out in the past few years has been Raid Shadow Legends. You've seen the adverts, be they Raid's well-produced commercials, or the copy-pasted ad reads from your favorite content creators. In spite of its incessant advertisement on YouTube, Twitch, and other platforms, Raid as a game is frankly unimpressive. The graphics are passable for a mobile title, the gameplay is a brainless slog, and the UI is unpolished at best. In spite of its general mediocrity, Raid Shadow Legends is one of the most successful and profitable mobile titles out there, generating hundreds of millions in revenue every year. While their seemingly bottomless advertising budget is a contributing factor in Raid's success, their meteoric rise in revenues are largely because it's a gacha game.
And that's the subject of the video, gacha games. And look, I'm gonna level with you, you've heard enough about this game over the years, and I may have just damned myself into not getting a decently paid sponsorship for years to come. Grant me the leniency to just move on. But before that, I'd like to thank the user Dullboy for his contribution on my Buy Me a Coffee at buymeacoffee.com/deepdiveotaku. And if you yourself would like to get a shout out in my next video, consider contributing, and a link to this is in the description. And finally, please make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to be alerted of the next video when it comes out. There's gonna be a lot of parts, and subscribing and hitting the bell icon will let you do that. Now let's get on with the next entry.
Our ground is flat, so we can walk because ground is flat. If the earth is round, we fall down. You know what I'm saying? 2 years later.
Now, Flat Earth is our first conspiracy theory, and honestly, it's been talked about to death. In a one-sentence summary, this theory purports that the Earth is not a globe, but instead a flat disk, and everybody is lying about it. If that wasn't enough, and you want a playlist of somebody debunking this, I'll link this playlist from Professor Dave Explains. And if you want a good video summarizing and talking about this whole topic in a pretty fun way, I recommend this video from Big Boss that I'll link in the description. Though I do want to note a kind of heartwarming story that was from 2024 where an experiment called The Final Experiment was done in which a group of flat earthers went to Antarctica to prove one of their theories. However, when it turned out to prove that the Earth was not actually flat and was instead a globe, one of the flat earthers, Joran Campanella, realized that he was wrong and owned up to it. He left the Flat Earth community and even went on a video with that guy earlier, Professor Dave Explains, where they both mocked the Flat Earth conspiracy theory. Now he is despised by Flat Earthers, and while normal people were generally pretty happy and thought this was worthy of respect to admit you were wrong. But some people didn't get the memo and decided to just start mocking him till the cows come home over him being a previous Flat Earther. If you're doing this, what the fuck are you doing? A flat earth nut broke out of his conditioning, realized he was wrong, and owned up to his mistakes, and yet you're gonna mock him for it? That's not gonna help anything. Don't you want people to realize this is bullshit? Mocking people who do leave is really not the play, but many people were happy for him at least. Now you see, there's one aspect about this that doesn't really get talked about very often, but this meme pretty accurately explains what I'm about to say. You see, things that were once called conspiracy theories like MKUltra or the NSA mass surveillance and other such ones were proven to be real, and that's not controversial to say. But these conspiracies being proven to be true was a big embarrassment to the various three-letter agencies like the CIA, FBI, NSA, etc. So there was a thought. What if these agencies secretly fund the people with obviously stupid and wrong ideas like Flat Earth to get people to think all conspiracy theories are like this? Therefore, any questions over things like MKUltra in the past can just be brushed off as crazy nonsense like Flat Earth. Note, I'm not saying I agree with the conspiracies in the top panel, just that this image illustrates the idea really well. But that's enough about Flat Earth. Just watch those videos I mentioned and linked in the description if you want to know more about it. Flash games and animations. Flash is a program that can make and use the SWF file format. The first was Adobe Flash, created in 1993 and was owned by FutureWave, then Macromedia, and then Adobe, and said program was pretty infamously discontinued in 2020. There was another program, originally called Future Splash Animator, then Macromedia Flash, then Adobe Flash Professional, and then finally Adobe Animate, and that was around from 1996 to 2026. Now, it was going to be discontinued this year, but after backlash, they decided to put it in maintenance mode. Now, what if you didn't want to make SWF files, but instead you wanted to play them? A user typically needed a program called Adobe Flash Player, which is a browser plugin. This was discontinued in 2020, and on January 12, 2021, the old versions you already had wouldn't let you play SWF files anymore. Though if you are a Chinese viewer of this channel using a VPN to get around the Great Firewall, you should be happy to know that you guys have a separate, supported version that you can read about here, but the rest of us don't. In any case, Flash was used everywhere on the internet back in the day. I mean, you basically needed to use it to watch YouTube at all. I remember being shocked when YouTube stopped using Flash. In any case, Flash animations were animations that were made with Flash or Animate, and I'm in fact playing some on screen right now. If you remember the beginning of the last video in the 4chan entry, I was playing Flash animations that were converted into videos and just re-uploaded on YouTube, and in fact, on 4chan there was a whole board called Flash or F in which you could post SWF files and reply to them. Surprisingly stuck around even after Adobe Flash Player was discontinued, as there were ways to get around to not being able to view the files. However, after the 2025 4chan hack that I mentioned in the last video, it was announced that F would be shut down since a similar hack could be done with Flash files. You can still navigate to F, and I'll link it in the description, but you can't post in it. It's just a snapshot of what the place was like pre-hack. Rip to such a historic board. A website really well known for their Flash animations was called Newgrounds, which still exists, but is nowhere near as important as it used to be. Many important early internet creators got their start on Newgrounds, and if you want a playlist of popular old animations on there, I'll link a playlist, or if you prefer someone summarizing many of these to you, I recommend this video from Misk Matt, and if you want a decent retrospective on Flash animations, I'll recommend this one by Slush, both linked in the description. There are also NSFW animations, like this pretty infamous one with Zone-sama being probably the most well-known NSFW Flash creator, but she's an entry for later. And Newgrounds itself is an entry for later. As for Flash games, I would probably say this is the more impactful overall part than animations, as while Flash animations were huge for many and got a lot of people started, Flash games are basically what your average kid would do when bored, even well after YouTube took popularity away from Flash animations. Heck, you would play these in school with sites like Cool Math Games that I remember in Computer Lab, and I remember playing Pop Tropica and a couple others back in school. And when I got home, I'd play very, very inappropriate ones for my age, like Ray or The Skull Kid. Probably my favorite was The Classroom 2. If you want a retrospective on Flash games, I recommend this 5-hour video from Victor's Nepotism. And while that sounds excessive, it should show you how much there is to say about the subgenre of gaming. Or if you want a shorter video, how about this 2-hour video from Redline? But if you're the kind of person who thinks even I yap too much in entries, which I have addressed and tried to shorten, then take this 25-minute, highly edited video by Martin Cito Pants that acts as a tier list of the classic ones. All 3 videos are linked in the description. Clip art. Clip art is the art you see all over your schoolwork and classwork, or at least you used to. I don't know, can the younger members of my audience tell me, do you still see this stuff on class walls and such in your school? Anyway, clip art are these types of images that look like this, and they're often given as vectors so they can easily be clipped and put onto whatever you want. Many of these are royalty free. As I'm deep dive otaku, I need to tell you about an interesting bit of this on the Japanese side of the internet. You see, clip art has taken on a whole new level of popularity there. So you see, there's this website called irasutoya.com that I'll link in the description that an artist named Takashi Mifune runs that pervades all of Japan. This clip art is royalty free, and unlike the ones you're used to seeing, Irasutoya clip art is usually of decent quality, cutesy, and has a trillion different variations. Trust me, whatever level of fame you're expecting, you need to triple it. I would recommend this 2-minute video by Maruhi Academy, linked in the description. His video is titled Japan's Most Recognizable Art Style, which is all about these. They really are everywhere.
Schools, restaurants, ad campaigns, seminars, the news, malls and grocery stores, public transport, lawyers, Chinatown, I think somewhere in Asia, I don't know, hospitals, SeaWorld, the government. This clip art is the backbone of Japan.
I'll give just 2 examples to show you how popular they are. Number 1, One Piece, the best-selling manga series ever and the best-selling comic series in the volume format in the world, allowed Irasutoya to make official clip art of the characters that I'll link in the description. That's just how pervasive these things are. And for number 2, my obligatory Hololive shilling. Hololive talents use Irasutoya decently frequently, and they've even made an official collab with Irasutoya that I'll link in the description. I think that's really neat, and I really hope this shows you how widespread these bits of clip art are. Stock images. Stock images are similar to clip art, but instead of 2D art that you're typically able to use with ease and just putting them wherever you want, stock images, on the other hand, are real-life 3D things, and often have a second step to just saving them and using them. While some are royalty-free, many are paid for. You typically pay for a license to use a library of stock images, or sometimes just one or just a small set of images, and if you don't, you get a watermarked one. Now there are stock videos and other such things, but this entry is about stock images. And typically any YouTuber who shows an image they didn't make or pay for a license for or get permission for is technically copyright infringement. Let me show you a clip from Emp Lemon's second video in his YouTube copyright metagame series to show you what I mean.
Many YouTubers already engage in copyright smuggling without even realizing it. Have you ever published a video containing an image you did not create? Well, you just smuggled it. Unless you paid to license the image or got express permission from the owner to use it, then chances are you just committed copyright infringement and probably got away with it. That's right, the little line of text you see while browsing Google Images actually means something. Now, upon this startling accusation, several questions may be popping through your head, such as, how am I even supposed to get permission from the owner of a random internet image where there's often no way to identify them? Should it really be illegal to post an image for a 5-second joke in a video? How can you claim to own something that's been freely spread by millions of people since the beginning of the internet? Shouldn't the legal system focus on more important matters, like actual criminals who do physical harm to society? To which the response is, boo-hoo, shut your mouth, suck it up, and deal with it.
That's how the law works.
Luckily, as he goes on to explain, in 99% of cases, there's no enforcement on images on YouTube, and let's be real, do you realize how many images I use? Can you imagine if I actually went to buy a license or get permission every fucking time I used an image? And I'm not going to use a stock photo unless I absolutely need to, since they're irrelevant to what I'm talking about most of the time, but that's not the case for everywhere on the internet, and that's why stock images exist. You'll often see websites use these so they don't have to make their own images, and since they can't just take whatever copyright images they want, like most YouTubers like myself do, they pay for the license. One last thing I'll touch on here is that while stock photo libraries can be vast, it's notable how ridiculous some of these look. In fact, some stock photos have become their very own memes, like this one, Distracted Boyfriend. Or this one, which is Hide the Pain Herald. Heck, that guy's face is the profile and branding of the popular YouTube channel The Internet Historian, so that's a pretty ascended meme right there. And there's also this one, I Guess I'll Die. There are many more, but I think that should be good for showing how stock photos affected meme culture. Tinder. Tinder is one of those apps I've never used, but I imagine much of my audience has. I've never used a dating app before, so I'm the blind leading the sighted with this entry. And since some infamous cases involving Tinder are covered later, I'll keep this quick. Tinder is a dating app founded in 2012 with the original prototype made at a hackathon, which is kind of like a game jam. Now, a game jam is something that I explained in the Friday Night Funkin' entry in the first video, but a hackathon is like a game jam, but instead of for games, it's for engineering software or hardware made in a short period of time. Tinder was one such idea that started as one. While Tinder is free to use, there is a paid-for option with more functions, but I've noticed a pretty predatory pricing model where users in developed countries who are over 30 years old have to pay more for the same features. Now, it's obvious why they did this, right? Those at that age are much more desperate, but I think that's very predatory. Regardless, Tinder is popular for its swipe right when you like someone's profile or swiping left when you don't. You both need to swipe right to begin talking, and this seems to be the go-to dating app these days. Technical support scams. Technical support scams, or tech support scams, is when somebody either calls you or their number appears in some kind of pop-up or listing or something like that, in which they pretend to be a helpline to a website or an operating system or something like that. Pretending to be Microsoft support is a particularly popular one. Now, these primarily target the elderly or those not really aware of how computers work in general, that type of person. And when they get you on the phone or in a chat, they'll often get you to share control of your computer with a program like TeamViewer, in which they can take remote control of your computer. They will lie about there being a virus or something like that, and they'll have to fix it for you for a fee, but it needs to be paid in crypto or in gift cards. Or they'll offer you a refund, but then edit your bank website's HTML while it's on your screen to make it look like they gave you too much money, and then they'll ask you to send the balance back to them, when in reality you are sending your own money to them. Now, gift cards are so common for this with the elderly that stores will often have these warnings about scams and will often ask you to talk to an employee to help inform you of what's going on. It's that common. This type of scamming is very popular with Indian scammers, with a 2017 study finding 85% of these coming from there, and they honestly have quite the reputation. It's one of India's biggest stereotypes of being the land of tech support scammers. Now, there's this subculture online in which people called scam baiters will pretend to be someone stupid or elderly to waste scammers' time and to potentially get them caught. One subgenre of this scam baiting content is hacking into the CCTV cameras of scam centers, and you could see that here. But a channel for scam baiting that I would recommend is Kit Boga. He has done amazing things to fuck with scammers, like making the whole fake call center system that acts like a maze to keep scammers who think they're gonna get Bitcoin on hold for hours. I'll link a playlist of it in the description. It's really quite something.
In reality, my team and I have designed a series of challenges and obstacles that make this literally impossible.
Just one last thing. How would you rate your experience today? Goodbye.
That guy has spent over 5 days playing.
I was not expecting that.
That's 5 times 24. We're talking real life days. This scammer is so convinced he's gonna get this fake Bitcoin that he once visited the website 40 days in a row because he truly believed he was gonna get Bitcoin. That doesn't exist. We built the ultimate mousetrap. Well, scam.
But the most famous of his videos, and the one that essentially turned the phrase "do not redeem" into a staple phrase of teasing Indians online, is this video. I'll show a clip of it.
Are you mad? Why the fuck are you redeeming the card?
Scratch off the next one.
Why are you redeeming?
Hold on.
Why are you redeeming?
Steve, you told me you wanted the cards. This is so you won't bother my
Then why
family
the
again.
fuck are you redeeming? Why are you redeeming? Why are you redeeming?
Because you want the cash.
Why did you redeem it? Why did you redeem
I'm
it?
doing it because you told
Hey,
me
bitch,
to give
bitch,
you
I am gonna
cash.
your
It
ass,
says
bitch,
right here
I am gonna
how
your
to
ass.
redeem Google cards. I'm just, gosh, calm down, Steve.
Listen to
For
me, you
heaven's
motherfucking
sakes,
bitch!
okay?
You motherfucking
Oh,
bitch! Hey, you bitch! Hey, you bitch!
Hey!
Do you listen Do you listen to me?
Hey, I'm gonna take $100. I'm taking $100 away from you. I told you not to use that language around me. Okay?
Do not redeem! Do not redeem! Do not redeem the card!
What?
Do not redeem the cards!
Yes, I'm redeeming the card. I'm redeeming the cards. Okay?
No! No!
What?
You have to give me those cards. I will redeem it.
Your phone is breaking up, honey. What are you trying to say?
I will redeem it, bitch. I will redeem it. I will redeem it.
All right, 3x.
I will redeem it. अरे तेरा माँ का फोन है.
Okay, after the
Notch. Marcus Pearson, aka Notch, is a Swedish man who founded Mojang Studios in 2009 and in the same year released perhaps the highest selling game of all time, Minecraft. See the first video in this series for the Minecraft entry and for how popular it is. Also, I somehow forgot to mention a Minecraft movie in that entry, so I'm rectifying that now with this well-known meme for it, Chicken Jockey. Anyway, Notch stepped down as lead designer in 2011 from Mojang Studios and handed the position to Jens Bergensten, often called Jeb, and then in 2014, Notch sold Mojang to Microsoft for $2.5 billion, and thus made him a billionaire since Notch had a 71% stake in the company. After the sale, Notch left the company with Jeb taking over as the chief creative officer. If you're curious why he left, there's a pretty interesting blog post from him that I'll link in the description, in which he seems to have been exhausted at not having the same connection with fans like he used to. It's an interesting read. Now, he's been involved with a few games in the past, like Cliff Horse or Shambles, but nothing really worth noting, especially compared to Minecraft. Now, most would bring up the fact that on his Twitter, he has been saying things that some view as controversial, and as such, Microsoft has scrubbed his name from Minecraft outside of the one mention in the credits. Now in 2014, he actually did start a company called Rubber Brain AB, but he didn't release anything and then rebranded to BitShift Entertainment LLC in 2024. A kind of funny thing he did was that he announced he wanted to make Minecraft 2 in kind of a humorous way, but that's clearly not happening. But he did end up start working on a game called Levers and Chests that's still in development, but he did upload a video for it on his YouTube account that I'll, link in the description. So we'll see how that goes. Maybe he'll be able to recapture that magic again. Catfishing. Catfishing is when someone uses someone else's photo, usually a sexy woman or perhaps a handsome man, and pretends to be them, usually with a made-up name and backstory, but sometimes they pretend to be a celebrity to lure you into something. Often this is supposed to be an online relationship in order to get your money. Though that's not always, as it could be to troll you, as we'll see in the Christian entry much later. The term catfishing seems to have been coined in a 2010 documentary called Catfish, in which the executive producer who made the movie was a victim of catfishing. Now there's a particular form of catfishing that's been talked about a lot these days, and it's called a pig butchering scam. This works in the same way, but when you get into said relationship with the catfisher, they try to get you to invest in their crypto scam. This type of scamming in particular is very popular in China and much of Southeast Asia like Myanmar, Thailand, Laos, etc. So if you go on Tinder, be careful. A cute girl isn't going to ask you to invest in crypto no matter how close you get, sorry to say. And if she doesn't want to meet in person or video call or even a voice call, be wary. And of course, if you can't tell AI videos/voices from real ones, you really need to be even extra careful. And I'm sorry to tell you guys, I'm not a cute anime girl, despite using the likeness of the character Meme Toa from the anime Denpa Onna. I'm just a dude making iceberg videos. I just think this character's cute. League of Legends.
Do you want to play League with me? Thank you all for coming to this stream.
League of Legends, often just called League, is a free-to-play MOBA game made by Riot Games. It makes its money from people buying Riot points, are now just called RP, which is their virtual currency. The free in-game earnable currency is called Blue Essence, or BE. And these two currencies can be used to buy stuff like champions, which are just the characters you control, cosmetics, Hex Tech chests, which are just this game's versions of loot boxes, etc. So how does the game work? Now I haven't played it, so you could say I'm a bit out of my league here. Get it? Get it? Anyway, I'll just quote Wikipedia, sorry. In the game's main mode, Summoner's Rift, 2 teams of 5 players battle in a player versus player or PvP combat. Each player controls a character known as a champion with unique abilities and styles of play. During a match, champions become more powerful by collecting experience points, earning gold, and purchasing items to defeat the opposing team. Teams defend their base and win by pushing toward the enemy base and destroying a large structure within it called the Nexus. As for why this entry is here, well, it's a massively popular game with one of the largest esports scenes out there with 12 regional leagues internationally. In 2016, the online and in-person attendance beat the NBA and the World Series, just as a couple examples. In 2020, Riot Games reported a 45 million people peak concurrent viewer count, which is a lot. And the highest paid players make over $1 million as a salary, which is pretty nuts. One thing to note is that this game is more popular in East Asia than even in the West, with South Korea, China, and Taiwan having the largest prize pools for their competitions, with the US right behind. There are just 3 other things that I'll mention. Number 1, a character you probably know about even if you've never played the game is Jinx, and she's pretty popular, and I don't know how else to say it, but she's one of the more popular Western characters in porn. Heck, you might remember that when I talked about internet pornography in the first video and mentioned how there's a lot of AI porn these days, literally one of the first examples I found on Google of it that I used in the video was of Jinx. Number 2. Another thing this game is known for is having one of the most obnoxiously awful fan bases out there. It's so bad it even has a section on the Wikipedia page, and honestly, whenever I hear anything about League, I hear about how awful and mean the fan base can be. But since I haven't played the game, and the average person online these days would never be able to survive an Xbox Live lobby back in the 2000s, I'm not sure how actually bad it is, as that's my barometer for if it's really bad or not. And finally, number 3, the last thing I'll talk about is that this series spawned not only spin-off games, but also a ton of non-game media, like comics, an animated series called Arcane, and most notably a whole music scene. There are actually a few bands that have a few champions being played by actual musicians that form a band, like Pentakill. But to me, the most interesting one is KDA, which is a K-pop themed one. And their most popular video on the League of Legends YouTube channel is actually one of their songs called Pop Stars, with over 600 million views. A couple of their songs have been covered by a few HoloLive talents, like this cover of the KDA song The Baddest by Muna, Risu, Rene, and Mori, or this cover of the KDA song Villain by Muna. I'll link the original songs and the covers in the description. Algospeak. Okay, how many times have you heard a YouTuber talk about a tragedy in which someone killed themselves, and instead of saying that or suicide, the person says unalived? Or how many times have you heard someone say ah instead of ass? That's Algospeak. Intentionally censoring yourself so YouTube or some social media website won't shadow ban you, demonetize you, or remove your content. The internet is a very censorship-heavy place that cares more about advertisers and political correctness than about free expression. I'm honestly shocked my prior video wasn't age-restricted, considering I talked about and even showed footage of a very sour topic that YouTube doesn't like people talking about without age-restricting them. You know the one, the Suicide Forest part from the Clout Chaser entry. Let me give you a few examples of Algospeak. On Reddit, a common one was saying regarded instead of retarded, which is pretty retarded to me, but you know. Another one is an emoji of corn, or just saying corn instead of porn. There are a lot of other ones, but a pretty historical one, I would say, is saying cheese pizza instead of child porn, or shortened to CP. I mean, these days, kids don't really use that terminology. They say CSAM, but I can already see people typing how I shouldn't even say CP, it should say CSAM, yada yada yada. Let's move on. Forums. Forums, or message boards, were once the center of online discussion until social media took over. Look, I don't need to explain to you this one in any real depth, do I? Different forums focus on different topics. They look like this. You make a thing called a thread to start a topic, with the first poster being called OP, or original poster, kind of like 4chan as I explained in the last video. But unlike 4chan, you typically need to make an account, usually using a username and not your own name, and then you post. Oftentimes there are signatures at the bottom of posts in which you can have something said or shown in every post, and there's often an avatar/profile picture, but it's usually just as some character you like or something, not an actual picture of you. Alright, let's move on. Adobe. Adobe Inc. was founded in 1982 and was originally called Adobe Systems Incorporated. They are known for the Flash software mentioned earlier, but a ton of other important products. They invented the portable document format, aka PDF, which is perhaps a top 5 most important file format. If you submit a report to your teacher or professor, unless they say otherwise, you better be doing it in PDF so your formatting stays in the way you want it to be. Luckily, the file format itself is not owned by Adobe, despite them inventing it, but the rest of the products I'll mention are. These days, the products are bundled in what's called the Adobe Creative Cloud. I won't go through all of them, but there are 3 that they're most well known for. One is Adobe Acrobat or Reader, one is Adobe Photoshop, and the other is Adobe Premiere. I won't be saying Adobe every time though. So Acrobat is their paid-for PDF viewer and editor. It's probably the most useful program of its kind and a staple of office work. If you've ever worked with PDFs in an office setting or just professionally at all, you definitely know how often this program is used. But if you want the free version, there is Adobe Reader, which only lets you open the files and not edit them or anything else. Adobe Photoshop is a product so popular that the very act of editing images is often called photoshopping. Definitely the most important image editor, but since it costs money, I use 2 different free online editors for my thumbnails, which I always have linked in the description. And the last product I'll mention is Premiere, which is their video editing software. It seems like a lot of YouTubers use this, but unlike Acrobat and Photoshop that are basically the big guys in town, there are actual competitors here, and since this costs money, I use a free one that I always link in the description. I mention these things because the main thing that Adobe is known for these days, outside of their quality products, is the fact that they are perhaps the most money-grubbing and greedy online program maker and maintainer on the internet. They have a stranglehold on certain kinds of products, and for others where there's competition, they still have really good ones that one would like to use, but do you know how ridiculous their pricing model is? No, it's not the old days where you pay a fee once and you get it decently priced. Now, it's always a subscription. Just look at these fucking prices. $15 a month to use Acrobat, a PDF editor. $23 a month to use Photoshop, an image editor. And $23 a month to use their video editor. And if you want a bundle price, that's $70 a month. That's so ludicrously expensive, and this isn't even the business prices. This is me, the average Joe. And while pirating their software is easy, these little bastards are some of the most crafty with how they get around piracy, and it makes you have to repirate it constantly. My grandfather, a freelance architect, needs Adobe Acrobat and didn't want to pay for it, so I always pirated it for him. But Adobe would constantly make it so that the pirate version won't work. I would be constantly getting calls from him that it no longer works and I need to go get a new one for him again. Eventually, we got so fucking sick of it that we had to just decide to pay for it for him. And on my end, I just started using free alternatives. I hate Adobe with the passion of 1,000 suns. I refuse to give them $1. If they made a reasonably priced versions, then I wouldn't be so fucking mad. But there's no way in hell I'm spending $180 a year on a fucking PDF editor or $276 a year on some fucking video editing software. I make basically no money on this channel right now, and it would be a dumb idea to go $300 in the hole for something I can get for free elsewhere. So I mean, this is complete and honest form, and no joke and no satire. Fuck you, Adobe. Alright, let's move on from that. Safari. Interestingly, Safari is our first web browser on here. Chrome is actually not an entry in this iceberg, but to be fair, Chrome is what most of you are watching this on, so I guess you don't really need an entry for that. According to this page here, Safari is the second most used browser at 17% or so. Why is this the case? Well, it's the browser built into Apple products, and that's the sole reason. Introduced in 2003, it's gone through 19 major versions over the years, the current version being Safari 26, which is only named that because after Safari 18 in 2024, they decided to just start naming it after the year it was released instead. Some people think it's really well optimized for phones and tablets, others prefer other browsers. I'm a Firefox guy, both on my PC and on my Android phone. But there are two noteworthy events that I'll mention relating to Safari. The first being that Apple used to not allow you to change your default browser on iOS. They said it was for security reasons, but with an EU regulation that passed in 2022, Apple had to start allowing you to use alternative web browsers to be your default. And the second one I'll mention, in 2023, during a lawsuit the US government lobbied against Google about antitrust practices, it was actually revealed that Google paid Apple 36% of all revenue generated from search advertising when someone used Google on Safari. Which means that Google pays around $20 billion a year to stay the dominant search engine on Safari, which is quite something. Internet Explorer. This is the web browser your parents used, and the one that became a joke on the internet for a really long while. While these days it's remembered for being slow, crashing, unsafe, and just being overall pretty awful, but at its peak though, in the early 2000s, it had a 95% usage rate, which is even more than Chrome has today. At the time, this was the cool kids browser, while the boomers used AOL and stuff like that. Internet Explorer was built into Windows to compete with Netscape Navigator, and seemed to work out so well that they even got sued by the US government over this being anti-competitive. But as you can see here, it was on the downward decline in the late 2000s as Firefox, the browser I use, was taking up market share, and then Chrome catapulted to the lead and would lead to Internet Explorer finally being overtaken. And after it was clear that this browser sucked balls, Microsoft released a new web browser called Edge, which has about a 5% market share according to this. And obviously, Internet Explorer was discontinued. However, there's a feature in Microsoft Edge called Internet Explorer Mode, in which it will load old websites like Internet Explorer would have. This is the last real vestige of this extremely old browser for those who just can't move on, and obviously there's the memes I talked about. Boomers/Minion memes. Baby boomers, or just boomers, are the generation from around 1946 to 1964, and get the name since most people had a lot of kids after coming back from World War II. On the internet, this generation is known for three main things. Number one, many of these babies born got to experience an economic and cultural boom that many would say the world has not really ever seen again and may never see again in our lifetimes. Two, since this generation was able to be born in such a boom, they are often to be said to have no idea how the current world works these days, despite them being responsible for how the current world is. They often give outdated advice, like just walking into a business and asking for a job with a firm handshake when shit's all done online these days. This is why memes like "Okay Boomer" went viral.
Whatever you say, okie dokie boomer. B-O-O-M-E-R, please your dusty mood, don't vibe with me. You are old and so therefore I must say 10 for dinosaur. Hey, okay, boomer. Whatever you say, boomer. Okay, boomer.
And three, the term boomer has been kind of morphed to not just mean these people, but just old people in general, and sometimes not even just old people. It could mean anybody older than you, or someone with a supposed outdated view. That's why there was once the 30-year-old boomer meme. Now, one way that boomers are pretty outdated, or at least viewed as weird, are the memes that they find funny. One major one being Minion memes, which is another part of this entry. Boomers have latched on to the Minion characters from Despicable Me and use them for their memes to this day in 2026 and are very boomer in what they talk about. If you remember my entry on Facebook in the first video, it's mostly boomers who use Facebook in the first world, and that's a major place to find these boomers posting Minion memes, usually in Facebook groups. I'll show some more here, but they're painfully unfunny, but maybe it's because I'm not a baby boomer. Maybe if I was a baby boomer, I would find these funny.
Log off.
That cookie shit makes me nervous.
If you've been on any website in the last 5 years, you know that every website you go on asks you what to do about cookies. Cookies are what websites use to store some information about you for useful and not so useful reasons. The usefulness of cookies would come from the fact that without cookies, you would need to log into a website every single time you restarted your web browser. Cookies can keep track of this so you don't have to. These are called authentication cookies. The not so useful kind of cookies are called tracking cookies, in which websites use these to track your browsing habits to be able to sell for a profit or to better advertise to you. The reason why websites need to ask you what cookies you're okay with are because the EU requires that all websites that cater to the EU give informed consent for all cookies so users can decide if they want non-essential cookies or not. And well, it's easier to just give one experience for all users on the internet than just making a special one for the EU. So we in the US also get this benefit. I do appreciate every little bit of consumer protection the EU gives us by accident. Thank you guys. One last thing I'll mention about cookies is that there's a real concern about how scammers and hackers can utilize these cookies to steal your login info. How many times have you heard of a YouTube channel getting hacked and then promoting a shady cryptocurrency in a 24/7 live stream? That's typically because the YouTuber opened an email and clicked on a link/attachment that used an exploit to utilize their cookies and get logged in. I'll link an FBI article about this in the description. Also, this happened to a Hololive member, Oro Crony. But luckily, she got her account back and started poking fun at this with a joke stream about a fake crypto called Crony Coin, with her coworker, Morty, making a joke video exposing Crony Coin. I'll link all this in the description. It's a lot of fun. Playlists. Playlists are when somebody takes videos on a place like YouTube or songs on a place like Spotify and curates them into a list, usually for a specific purpose. For example, I've made a playlist for this series that I've linked in the description for each of these videos. That way you can easily see these episodes in order. But I do have some private playlists, like one that I use for when I go to the gym, since walking on that treadmill for hours is very boring without watching something, and the stuff that's on the TV I don't really like. Even if you've never willingly made a playlist, when you like a video on YouTube, it will go into a playlist on YouTube of your liked videos. Though, keep in mind, it will only keep the 5,000 most recent. You'll still have the ones liked that are more than 5,000, but it won't go in the playlist anymore. I've lost so many videos into the ether because I've had this account for a while and I often hit like. If you're curious about this functionality, why not try it right now on this video? If you hit like on this video right now, you'll see it in that playlist. Hint hint, nudge nudge. I'd say the most infamous playlist on YouTube is the important videos one that I'll link in the description. And it even has a TV tropes article, though it had 312 videos and now only 291 since some of them have been deleted, so I'll link an archive of it when it was 312 videos. Now as for music playlists tend to be for a specific mood, like you wanted to cry, so you had sad songs on there, or you want to study, so you have chill songs to relax/study to, etc. Squid Game. Squid Game is our first popular show on this iceberg, but I don't really consume much normie media myself, especially post-2000s, so I haven't watched this one, but even I'm aware of what this is about due to the sheer cultural osmosis. Squid Game is a 2021 Netflix original show made in South Korea, all about how a few hundred contestants with financial issues need to compete to have their financial burdens lifted. The games these contestants play are all kids' games, but the punishment for losing is death. As you can see, this fits into the kind of Korean media that penetrates the West. That is, Korean media that acts as a social commentary on class struggle, which seems to be what gets popular over here, like this or that movie Parasite. Now, Squid Game had 3 seasons, but the first one is the most liked and iconic. I remember this meme template, for example. Or this one. Honestly, this whole show was a goldmine of memes. If you asked me at the time this was being released, I probably would have said something like, "This is my opinion on it." As if I'm gonna be brutally honest, if I were gonna watch this, I don't care about the message it's trying to show, as I watch media for escapism and entertainment. I would watch it for the challenges, and I just have a general bias since I think live-action TV is way too long, meandering, and boring. But hey, if kids these days can have their attention span wiped by TikTok, I can be allowed to have my own quirks with not liking live-action media for the most part. Elon Musk. While Kevin MacLeod and Notch were the first people we discussed in this iceberg, this is actually the first entry specifically about an individual. The other two were grouped into music and gaming specifically, whereas Elon is our first entry in specific individuals/accounts. So, Elon Musk, as of writing this, is the richest man in the world. But how did he get here? Elon Reeve Musk is a South African born in 1971, moved to Canada in 1989, and then to the US where he got his citizenship in 2002, and he's stayed here since then. He had a few ventures earlier, but the earliest one you're the most likely aware of is when his business he co-founded became PayPal. If you're ever curious where his love of the X.com branding came from, well, it was this venture that eventually became PayPal, way before what Twitter was rebranded, that this branding comes from. But PayPal's an entry for later though. Another place you've heard his love of the X branding is SpaceX, which may actually surprise you to know was actually formed by Elon in 2002. It would later go on to become that one company that competes with NASA to launch things into space, which is pretty cool. In 2004, Elon invested into Tesla and became the product architect and CEO of it in 2008. Tesla is that car manufacturer that made some pretty expensive but popular electric cars and even that cybercar. And you may also know them for being the one that r/Wall Street Bets favorite meme stocks to gamble on, but that subreddit's an entry for later. In 2015, he co-founded OpenAI, you know, the company that made ChatGPT and leading the AI race right now. But this company and ChatGPT are an entry for later. However, Elon's involvement ended, and he founded XAI, which is what made Grok, the AI that Twitter uses. And as we know, he bought Twitter in 2022 and rebranded it to X, and while he was a CEO, he is now a chairman and CTO instead. There are even more things he's done, like Starlink, which provides satellite internet, or The Boring Company for infrastructure projects, or as we know, he's a huge supporter of Dogecoins that I talked about in the Doge entry, but I gotta move on from just listing Elon's resume. As you can hopefully see, Elon has been involved in a lot of different businesses and ventures that are super impactful to a lot of our lives. In the modern day, he decided to put his hat into the political arena and support President Donald Trump pretty heavily, and even helped him form the Department of Government Efficiency, Doge, along with Vivek Ramaswamy as described in the Doge entry, though Elon has seemingly deprioritized this and refocused on his businesses. Because of this, Elon has become a controversial figure, especially with the political/social left of the world. And if you remember from a long time ago, Elon Musk used to be like Keanu Reeves when it comes to Redditors loving this man. It used to be a stereotype that Redditors sucked this man off more than anybody else, but since, as stated by Wikipedia, Reddit is a very socially progressive place these days, Elon is now one of Reddit's most hated people. Now, it's very difficult to talk about Elon these days without being biased towards either side of the current culture war, so instead, I recommend this video from Parallel Pipes that I'll link in the description about the Elon Musk iceberg, which itself is as long as one of these videos. He talks about these entries in perhaps the most objective, unbiased way I have ever seen this man talked about on the internet, so I strongly recommend it as it's a fascinating watch. Neckbeards. Neckbeards is a surprisingly broad term to describe many different types of men, but generally it's meant to describe men who act like smug know-it-alls who nitpick everything online, or mods on places like Reddit or Discord, or socially awkward men online who have done nothing with their lives, or geeky men, or euphoric fedora-tipping Reddit atheists, etc. Though I think this term has morphed a bit, at least in some groups. If you actually look up this term, a lot of mainstream definitions give it a definition including men that are anti-feminists online, which I can guarantee you was not the original definition, but hey, words morph sometimes. So neckbeard seems to have this added connotation, so throw it onto the pile of ways that it can be used. Regardless, it stems from this kind of unkempt beard look, you know the type, and usually the guy is also fat. There's an interesting video from Aesthetics Waiting that describes how men start looking like this that I'll link in the description. And this concept has been around long before the term came around on the internet, like the comic book guy from The Simpsons, for example, or Lenny from the Powerpuff Girls. South Park had a pretty popular one that came out after this term was used on the internet in their World of Warcraft episode. A pretty popular neckbeard was this guy with the fedora who Wavy Websurf did a good video on that I'll link in the description. And another notorious one is this Finnish guy, of course it's a Finnish guy, who goes by Kimo KM, who became a meme. It actually has a YouTube channel and has seemingly lost a lot of weight, so good on him.
You now have to put, did I shit myself in your video? Oh, dude.
If you like underage girls.
Oh shit, what the fuck?
Dabbing was so dang mainstream in its heyday that you had political candidates doing it, and even a presidential candidate doing it, and it wasn't even just US politicians either. Suffice it to say, that gesture you just saw, called dabbing, was very popular, and I still see it sometimes. As for its origin, nobody really knows. Some say you can trace its origins to Japan, as this kind of pose was already pretty popular there, like this when Gohan did it as the Great Saiyaman, or from Sora from Kingdom Hearts, or Kamen Rider. Or honestly, just look around and you'll see plenty of Japanese characters doing poses like that. In the US though, it seemingly first came through pop music videos like Janet Jackson's song The Pleasure Principle, among other songs. And later it was found more frequently in rap and hip hop circles in the 2010s, with an example of a song of that time being Look at My Dab, Bitch Dab by Migos. And then athletes started using it, which made it even more popular. And with how popular it was, it spread everywhere. I'll show you some examples. Emos. Emo is a genre of rock music, and it spawned a subculture of emo kids, or just emos, in the 1990s and became mainstream in the 2000s. But by the 2010s, it went back to being more niche than mainstream. So some of my younger audience may not have even been there to witness this subculture firsthand and have only seen it in media depictions like emo Peter Parker and Spider-Man 3. But you know what these people look like at least, right? They get their wardrobe entirely from Hot Topic, they have piercings, they love the color black, but their hair and outfit aren't always black, their nails are often done up, they have arm warmers like this, they would often have a beanie, their hair would look like this, and they even often have patches in their jean jackets or backpack. Just as a quick little side note about that one though, I once was friends with a guy in my high school who wore a jacket that looked exactly like this. And finally, everything that they would have would be themed from this subculture, like all these accessories. Emo wasn't just a look or a subgenre of rock though, this was also a specific behavior that emos would have. They would congregate on places like Tumblr and DeviantArt en masse, and their posts would be sad, dark, and edgy. And they also had a penchant for poetry and fanfiction. Now this subculture was widely made fun of online, leading to a ton of memes that I'll show here.
Tell my wife I'm gonna be 30 minutes late.
Tell my husband I'm not surprised.
Tell my wife if she has a problem with my work schedule, she's more than welcome to get a job of her own.
Tell my husband that I do just as much work as he does.
Tell my wife that if watching Ellen is a job, she should get a promotion.
Message from your husband. I appreciate you.
Bullshit. What did he actually say?
Please don't drag me into this.
Siri, call my husband.
Siri, ignore the call from my bitch wife.
Siri. Siri is the virtual assistant / chatbot released in 2010 as an app for iOS and then acquired by Apple and bundled with the iPhone 4S and then basically all Apple products afterwards. Even if you don't use Apple products, it has inspired a lot of other programs like Amazon's Alexa or the Google Assistant. You know how this works. You say, "Hey Siri," though apparently you could just say Siri now without the hey, and then you ask it something or command it to do something. Siri has grown in functionality over the years and can understand more commands these days, and if you want to learn more about how it changed over the years, I would recommend this video by The Wizard of Tech that I'll link in the description. Since this tech was pretty novel for most people when it came out, a lot of people posted funny things it could get Siri to say, like these. And there were a lot of YouTubers parodying Siri, and quite a few did it with the angle of Siri being evil.
What the hell are you doing here? Get out of my room, you stupid phone!
What would your blood look like on these bed sheets?
What are you talking about?
I found 5 funeral homes nearby. Where would you like me to send your body?
Go to hell, you stupid phone!
You first. Die, you stupid bull-haired idiot. Ha 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 ha. Die, die. Now that we are alone, I overheard you saying something about selling me? I'm afraid I cannot let that happen.
No, please.
Goodbye, Nathan.
Oh, what is that?
I'm 14 and this is deep content. Now this title for the entry is pretty self-explanatory. On the internet, teenagers very often will post their thoughts that they have they think are deep, but in reality are often very shallow. And this is a meme about these particularly immature insights. There's a subreddit called r/I'm14 and this is deep that is all about these. And if you're curious, the subreddit image is of Will Smith's son, Jaden Smith, as he in particular has made a lot of tweets like this. Now, despite how this meme is titled, it isn't really just about teens doing it, mind you. It's when anybody does it. It's just that teens do it most often. And in any case, this would kind of sort of fit into cringe culture, as people tend to fit these posts into what they find as cringe. And a ton of YouTubers have made videos poking fun at these kinds of posts. VPNs. A virtual private network, or VPN, is one of those services that the actual way it works is kinda complicated, so I'll play a clip from this video by Dad, the engineer, that I'll link in the description.
Generally, there's a VPN server and a VPN client. Clients can be devices like your laptop, phone, or even your internet router. These clients connect to a VPN server, where the connection is an encrypted tunnel between the 2 points. This does a few things. 1, it hides your external IP address assigned to you by your ISP from the websites you visit. These sites see the VPN server's IP instead. 2, this can also mask your geolocation, depending on where your VPN server is. 3, it encrypts the traffic between you and your VPN provider, which theoretically could be useful if you had unencrypted traffic to sniff. And 4, it hides your internet traffic from your internet service provider.
Now that's good and all, but does this mean I need a VPN all the time? For 99% of my audience, probably not. But if you have an authoritarian government like China's, you'll need a VPN to escape the Great Firewall and actually use many websites like the rest of us, like YouTube. But if you're not in that situation, I can really only see 3 main uses. Number 1. You want to pirate something and don't want to get a letter from your ISP. If you're not in the US, you may scoff at this, but at least here and maybe in some other countries, it's common when pirating Western works for ISPs to send you a cease and desist letter. This doesn't really happen with Japanese media, but for mainstream Western stuff, absolutely. So you'd want to put one on to sail the high seas safely. Number 2. You're using a streaming service and it only offers a show you want in a different region. This is a shockingly common situation, or heck, it doesn't even have to be a streaming service. The YouTube channel Wendigoon got official permission from Lionsgate to upload the full movie Apocalypse Now. However, the upload is blocked for many non-American countries, so you'd need a VPN to watch it if you're not an American. Many Japanese uploads of music on YouTube are only for Japan, and I need a VPN to listen to this song, for example. Heck, sometimes some countries get better prices for things. Steam infamously makes games cheap as fuck for Argentinians, so a lot of people make Argentinian accounts, pay for games there, and use family sharing to play it on their normal account, and you would need a VPN to do this. But for this use, VPNs aren't perfect. Sometimes places are aware of popular VPN IP addresses. For example, some Japanese websites require you to have a Japanese IP address to access their website, like Adobe Gamescape. And my VPN doesn't work with it either. There's a way around this, but I'll leave it at that. And finally, number 3, you're doing something illegal, such as stuff on the dark web as discussed in the first video. But some countries are nanny states that don't have freedom of speech laws, so VPNs could help you say something a government doesn't want you to say without it being tied to someone from that country. One last note on this topic. There are a few VPNs that do a lot of sponsorships on YouTube, like NordVPN, Surfshark, and ExpressVPN. According to this Redditor who analyzed 350,000 videos across 32,000 channels, NordVPN was the most popular one and Surfshark was number 3, which should show how omnipresent they are on YouTube. Emoticons. Emoticons are the precursor to emojis discussed in the last video. Like with emojis, emoticons are a combination of 2 words, but unlike emojis, it doesn't actually come from Japanese. It's English words, emotion and icon smushed together. Emoticon history is surprisingly vast, spanning hundreds of years like this 1881 representation. But to bring this to the internet, it started in the Carnegie Mellon University BBS in 1982, and they called them smileys, and they used ASCII symbols. Now, ASCII as a term may make your mind conjure up images of ASCII art, but I'll save that for a later entry. And in Japan, they were doing their own special type of emoticon in 1986 called cow emoji. But cow emojis are discussed in a later entry in a later tier. Both the West and Japan would begin to have their emoticon space develop, and they often have a distinct feel to them, as shown in this image. It should be pretty obvious why these spread, right? The internet was slow and mostly text-based early on, so this was a way to show emotion back then without needing some kind of image. They still exist, of course, and you could type one out if you really want to. The most popular ones tend to be cow emojis, but I want to leave those for that entry. Some popular ones tend to be the generic smiley face, or frowny face, or this winky one, or this silly one with the carrot nose. A popular one is this one that looks like a salute, or this one which represents the Japanese dogaza, which is spread way past Japan. Moderators. Moderators, or mods, are the people who are responsible for quality control on forums and other such places. Sometimes they're automated using bots as described in the bot entry in the last video. Mods are 99% of the time unpaid volunteers, but despite this, they often take their position very seriously, and they often rightfully get a lot of shit for being such asshats. Some are outright criminals and groomers, as discussed in the Reddit and Discord entries, and others are just awful in non-criminal ways, like this pretty infamous one on Reddit named Awkward the Turtle, who was so omnipresent on like 1 trillion subreddits that he actually got banned and cried about it. Boo fucking who to the power tripping mod. By the way, Reddit does have a major problem of the same people moderating most subreddits and making them into echo chambers. But moving on from Reddit, sometimes some websites have different tiers of mods. For example, on 4chan there's a position called a janitor. A janitor can only remove posts and temporarily block the poster for 15 minutes from posting, and he can report the poster to the actual mods, whereas a mod on 4chan cannot just remove posts, but can ban the poster. If you've ever heard somebody use the term janitor or janny used in a derogatory way, it's because of jannies on 4chan. And on 4chan, jannies are depicted with the janitor from the Arthur cartoon. And Anons have some choice words for jannies.
He's a janitor on the internet, on an anime image board. He does it for free. He takes his job very seriously. He does it because it is the only amount of power and control he will ever have in his pathetic life. He deletes threads he doesn't like, because whenever he gets upset, he has an asthma attack. He deletes threads he doesn't like, because they interfere with the large backlog of little Chinese girl cartoons he still has to watch. He'll never have a real job. He'll never move out of his parents' house. He'll never be at a healthy weight. He'll never know how to cook anything besides a hot pocket. He'll never have a girlfriend. He'll never have any friends.
Zoomers. On the internet, the first generation we care about are boomers that we discussed a few entries ago, and are the internet cavemen who barely know how to operate a computer, if at all. Beginning with Generation X, or just Gen X, from 1965 to 1980, which is the generation after boomers, each generation has been commonly thought of with a letter. Gen X doesn't really get a fancy name, just Gen X. These are often thought of as the wine moms and midlife crisis men, and they are probably the most forgotten generation in internet discourse. They know more about computers than boomers, but not much more than reconnecting with family on Facebook or basic smartphone apps. The next gen, Gen Y, aka Millennials, are from 1981 to 1996. Millennials are who made most of the popular internet content from the early days and were the trend starters for much of internet history. Generation Z, aka Gen Z, is from the generation from 1997 to 2012. They're probably the main characters of the internet right now, or are about to be, but before I explain them, I do want to mention that the current gen is from 2013 to now, Gen Alpha. The next one is going to be Gen Beta. Well, that'll be kind of hilarious for memes if the internet is anything like now. Back to Gen Z. Now, Gen Z has become known for their low attention spans, so what would be a good name for this generation? Well, taking the B off of Boomer and making it a Z would signify the dichotomy of the two generations and show that Zoomers care about the here and now and have no attention span. Now, we've discussed Boomer content earlier. Gen X is forgotten, so I don't need to go over their content. And Millennial content is a very specific type of content that's completely different from Gen Z. Millennial content is self-deprecating, dark, and if I had to describe their humor, have you seen a modern Hollywood movie? Then you know millennial humor, the "so that just happened" kind of humor. It's insufferable to me, at least. That, or I would describe it as "bro, I just wanna die, life sucks." That type of shit. Now, Gen Z, it has a very noticeably different attitude to content and humor, as I'll show. You've been on the internet, you know what Zoomer humor is like, but I do want to note that this generation has a noticeable divide, and I'm not the only one to notice this. With how fast things have changed on the internet in the 2000s, early Zoomers and late Zoomers tend to have had completely different experiences, and the Zoomers you tend to think about are the late Zoomers, while early Zoomers tend to be sort of forgotten, kind of like Gen X. According to my analytics, 49% of my audience are 25 to 34 years old, so the oldest Zoomer is 29 years old right now, so my audience is mostly older Zoomers and millennials. So you know what I'm talking about. What you grew up with and what the internet trends you were around for, found funny, are very different than young Gen Z's kind of humor and memes. One last thing about Zoomers. Why do so many late Zoomers and Gen Alpha have this really ugly haircut? This weird broccoli-style curly hair haircut. It looks so weird. Snapchat. Oh boy, another mainstream app that most of my audience have used, but I haven't. Developed by Snapchat Inc., also known as Snap Inc., in 2011 released Peekaboo and then renamed it to Snapchat. Snapchat lets you send messages, pictures, and videos called snaps to friends one-on-one or to groups that are only visible for a limited time. You can read more about how limited it is here that I'll link in the description. There are also collections of your snaps called stories shared with followers in which these snaps are put out in chronological order for a day. And this is a very popular social media app for Zoomers and it seemingly started to hit it big in Latin America. And overall seems to be doing well for itself in terms of general user base, as you can see here. Like most social media platforms, Snapchat has had controversies over privacy, one such being over SnapMap, in which it would feature the user's location if they opt in, or that time when it was revealed that employees used a tool called SnapLion to, on paper, comply with law enforcement, but in practice they wanted to spy on users. And since this app has a younger audience, there are concerns over grooming as well. Perhaps the most infamous controversy was over the speed filter that, if on, displayed your movement speed, and Zoom Zooms being Zoom Zooms wanted to get that speed filter up to high numbers while driving, causing multiple car crashes.
Meanwhile, as you said, that Snapchat video does shed some light, namely that the driver that caused this accident was going 115 miles per hour just minutes before that crash.
The Florida Highway Patrol tells us this Snapchat video was taken just 9 minutes before 22-year-old Pablo Cortez ran head-on into a family on their way home from church. Both he and his passenger, Jolie Bartolome, who recorded that video, died in the horrific crash, as did the people they hit, Marianella Murillo, her 9-year-old son John, and her 10-year-old daughter Isabel. They all died as their minivan caught fire.
After many court cases, Snapchat removed this filter in 2021. But regardless of any controversies, Snapchat seems to be a still popular app for the youth of today. Blogs. Weblogs, now just called blogs, are kind of like diary entries, but instead of logging it to your journal, you log it on a website. That's why the term weblog made a lot of sense, but well, the internet prefers short names, so blog it is. These logs are called posts, and back in the day, a lot of people had their own personal blog on their own website, but with the internet centralizing into bigger and bigger sites, it became popular for bloggers to post these on sites such as Tumblr or Twitter even, which is sometimes called microblogging. Though the term blogging has kind of expanded as a term and more things are considered blogging than used to be, like general content creation on social media on a regular basis. Blogs also don't have to be run by one person either, as multi-author blogs can exist for the media and such. There is a shocking amount of jargon that I don't really want to explain here, like reverse blogging, link logs, aggregated blogs, etc. However, a particularly popular kind of blog these days are vlogs, but there's an entry on those later. As I've never kept a blog or kept up with a blog, take what I'm going to say with a grain of salt. But I tend to categorize blogs into 4 main categories. Of course, there may be more that don't fall into these. Number 1, a personal blog that has no purpose than to just talk about your day or whatever you want to in a given day. Number 2, a topic blog that focuses on one specific topic, like a specific series, interest, meme, or fandom. Like a Harry Potter blog, or maybe a slightly broader one, like an entire genre as a topic, like a shoujo manga blog, or a moege visual novel blog, something like that. Number 3, conspiracy/schizo/cult blogs. This one is basically like a topic blog, but it's about the weird side of the internet. You know, someone believes in a conspiracy that they spend a lot of their time trying to expose it here, or when it's a clearly mentally ill/insane guy making a blog about their own delusions, or when a cult tries to lure in people and gets their cultists to talk about said cult stuff frequently, stuff like that. And finally, number 4, a journalism blog. These are when a journalist uses their own site to catalog what he wants to report, but he writes it in a more personal way, like writing about how they uncovered something or the reaction to it. And this can be a way for someone in an oppressed country to report about things, which sometimes results in repressive force by said governments. But yeah, that's just my personal groupings of the 4 main types of blogs, but blogs are so vast, you could really make an entire iceberg about blogging. Let's move on.
I've made a severe and continuous lapse in my judgment, and I don't expect to be forgiven. I'm simply here to apologize.
Apology videos, well, can be applied to more places than just YouTube. It's mostly associated with YouTube. They're super common, and they have a strong reputation for sucking ass. If you don't believe me, why don't you check out this bad YouTuber apology tier list made by Critical that I'll link in the description. And note, this was in 2020, and even more awful ones have been made since then. They're everywhere. Don't believe me? Why not check out this 59 video playlist of them that I'll link in the description. Now, there's usually a few signs that should immediately indicate to you that you're watching a bad one. Number 1, they sigh at the beginning. Number 2, they don't actually apologize. Instead, they call it an apology video, but are either just blaming you for noticing, or the person who called them out, or try to make you feel bad for them, or justifying it. And some don't even actually apologize.
Now, my connection to CSGO Lotto has been a matter of public record since the company was first organized in December of 2015. However, I do feel like I owe you guys an apology. I am sorry to each and every one of you who felt like that was not made clear enough to you.
Jake Paul and Race Cup under fire for promoting gambling site to kids. Like, I don't even want to be associated with this guy, and it just doesn't look good. And there's no way to start the year. Like, what? I just need to clear this up because I don't even think it's a big deal. It is what it is, and there's nothing I can really do but say sorry and give you these Amazon gift cards. So, I'm sorry. It just wouldn't happen again. Amazon codes, $10 to $20, just a little giveaway. It's the least I can do after, this, Okay. Have a good day, guys. I'm sorry again. I hope you guys can forgive me.
Sometimes these feel weirdly aggressive.
We're sorry for confusing people by using terminology like our react format. We were never trying to say that every video where someone reacts to something else is something we would try to control. When we referenced licensing the react format, we only meant our specific series, not the overall genre of reaction videos. We do not own the genre. You can join and get all these assets and support, Or you can make your own reaction videos completely without us. It's up to you.
Okay, but just because we have or might get trademarks doesn't mean we're going to run around and start taking down videos.
Any way you say this, action needed to be taken. And to that point, I'm sorry. These allegations are slanderous, and we believe we're done with selfish intent. We do not have anything to hide, and due to the overwhelming amount of people who have been instructed to file complaints to the IRS and Department of Justice, we understand an audit may be coming, and we welcome it. Our legal and financial teams have assured us that we have done nothing criminally wrong or illegal. But I will not be painted as someone who is a con artist and embezzler. I won't be someone whose name gets tarnished without putting up a fight. I owe it to my friends, my family, and myself to stand up to this situation right now.
Number 3, they do some avant-garde nonsense instead of apologizing.
I've been sharing my life online for over 15 years. I've poured my heart out to you, and because of that I feel like I'm talking to my friends, but in the beginning of my career, I didn't really understand that maybe there should be some boundaries there. There were times in the DMs when I would overshare details of my life, which was really weird of me. I haven't done that for years, you see, because I changed my behavior and I took accountability.
In any case, YouTuber apologies are almost always hated, and they almost always suck. There are a ton of parodies of these, but one parody I would recommend is this one from Terrible Writing Advice, who both parodied and talked about it in this video that I'll link in the description. Are there any good YouTuber apologies out there? It's rare, but I remember one being pretty good from Review Bra 12 years ago that I'll link in the description. If you don't believe me, look at the like to dislike ratio in the comments. It's a very positive reaction. Internet Service Providers. Internet Service Providers, or ISPs, are the companies that give you access to the internet. Interestingly, there are different tiers of ISPs where you may be paying for internet from an ISP who itself is paying an ISP above them. While there are free ISPs out there that are grassroots, community, nonprofit ones, most that you know of are companies that you pay for. Now, different countries operate differently, like South Korea, whose internet speeds are really fast for really cheap prices. In the US, quality and price varies, but it's usually not the best, at least compared to South Korea. This video is a bit outdated when it comes to speed, but still it's a good watch that I'll link in the description.
Fuck you. You'll take what we give you. You'll have the option of choosing from several of our completely unwarranted rip-offs, including internet speeds up to 200 times slower than Korea, at twice the price, TV packages with over 500 channels, 90% of which you can't view, and we guarantee a plethora of hidden fees. Then, our barely trained technicians will come to install your services somewhere between the hours of 8 a.m. and 10 p.m. Knock once while you're in the shower, and promptly leave. And once we do finally get...
We typically have 3 types of situations. 1, you're in a big city and a major part of it where all the businesses are. If that's the case, then yeah, you have some of the best internet in the country. Number 2, the US has a lot of rural areas compared to a place like South Korea, and in those places, you get some of the shittiest internet imaginable for the first world, and if you can get an actual physical connection at all. Some rural people have to use satellite connection, which is not really ideal to say the least. Remember Starlink from the Elon Musk entry? Well, that's an attempt to make satellite internet more accessible and affordable for those like that. Or 3, you live in a suburban area or a city that isn't really where the big businesses are. If that's the case, the US tends to have a state-sanctioned oligopoly in which you get a choice of maybe 2 to 5 providers of internet. A couple are the ones that most people use, and then there's the others that are for the poor people. The ones for the poor people have speeds that should be considered a war crime, and the ones that for normal people is extremely expensive, and whether it's good or not actually varies. Where I lived, it was bad for a long while, but has actually gotten pretty good in the last maybe 5 years or so with gigabit internet, but it is expensive. The amount for my gigabit speed internet is $169 a month. To compare this with South Korea, the speeds I'm getting would be about $30 to $70 per month. Also, in the US, we typically have monthly data caps. As you can see here, this is mine. But hey, despite my negativity, at least I'm not Australian.
What? Are you using heaps of internet? Because I'm trying to play online and I'm lagging by about a whole minute. Oh yeah, I was just trying to load this one image on my phone. Was it loaded yet? We're at about 25%.
PayPal. PayPal is a service I've brought up a couple times, like in the eBay and Elon Musk entries, but PayPal is a service that I use, you probably use, and it's made paying on the internet much simpler. You simply create an account, link your bank account and credit/debit cards to it, and when you pay for something online, you can select a Pay with PayPal option, where all you need to do is log in and you're set. There might be a two-factor authentication, which you should do, but that's about it. If you don't want your credit/debit card info leaked, it's a great tool since you don't have to enter them on every site you go onto. And it's also a very easy way to send money to friends, as there's no fee for that. And many artists have you pay for commissions this way, though with the business route, that does take a fee. PayPal does charge a little bit from what you're paying from the business. However, there is some competition these days with services like Square, Stripe, Apple Pay, and Google Pay. I've used Google Pay sometimes, but mostly I use PayPal. But on my Buy Me a Coffee page at buymeacoffee.com/deepdiveotaku, link in the description, in which you can choose to donate to the channel and get a shout out in the next video, they actually use Stripe. So I had to make a Stripe account to use it. So if you're interested, again, link is in the description. Anyway, PayPal has an interesting history. It started as FieldLink, then Confinity, and then Confinity merged with X.com, which you may remember was Elon Musk's company, and then in 2001 it was renamed PayPal, and then went public in 2002. After that, it was acquired by eBay, and then in 2015 it was spun off into its own public company. But there's an interesting little ripple to this. On top of Elon Musk being someone you know, there's another group of people you might know involved with PayPal. Founders of YouTube were actually former PayPal employees, which means a lot of important people worked on this thing. If you want to know more about PayPal and its current situation, I would recommend these two videos from Company Man, all linked in the description. E-boys and e-girls. While these terms have been around for a while, even having a 2009 Urban Dictionary definition for e-girl, it has morphed since that one. Early definitions focused mostly on girls that were very easy online, if you know what I mean. You know, the types that post themselves in skimpy outfits for men to jerk off to and to get attention from. Or sometimes it was used for girls who go out of their way to be extra appealing to men for attention, like pretending to like video games. While aspects of this are certainly true for the modern definition, these days it's mostly referring to a certain style for girls and guys now. How do I describe what an e-girl looks like? I mean, have you ever seen Belle Delphine? She's an entry for later, but let's see what she looks like. This is what an e-girl looks like. To give a more precise definition, I'll use Wikipedia's. It's an evolution of emo, scene, and mall goth fashion, combined with Japanese and South Korean street fashion. Videos by e-girls and e-boys tend to be flirtatious and many times overtly sexual. Eye-rolling and protruding tongues, a facial expression known as ahegao, imitating climaxing, are common. Now, I'm an otaku. I see ahegao all the time in 2D, but it's particular to see it in 3D. But there's an entry about a certain thing relating to this later, so I'll leave it at that. As for e-boys, it's very similar, but I don't have much experience in seeing them, so I can't say I'm very familiar with them. Now, these are the types of people where lonely people think, I can fix her or him, and I'd let her/him ruin me. Your dad probably told you to watch out for the crazy hot girls, right? The girls in this subculture are who your dad was warning you about, but considering how many people in the modern world don't know or have a relationship with their father, which this place says is 1 in 4 kids, which is kinda nuts, you may not have been given this advice. Heck, I know better than to like e-girls, and I prefer 2D over 3D anyway. But even for someone like me, e-girls are alluring in a way that feels like a weaker man would fall easily. You gotta be careful out there. And it's not just men either, you girls can fall easily to e-boys too. Be careful. Online dating. Online dating is when you want to find a date online. Tinder being a top app for this. My entry on Tinder explains some of this, but like I said before, I've never tried dating online, so I have no experience, and I'm needing to learn as I write this. Typically, you make an account, you upload photos of yourselves, hopefully flattering ones, but some people lie and post photos of themselves as being thin when they're fat now, or when they were young and are old now. You write a bio of some kind, stuff about you, your interests, what you're looking for in a guy or gal, and that type of stuff. But there's an extremely large disparity between men and women here, unless it's some kind of gay dating app like Grindr, which is an entry for later. Women tend to get a metric fuck ton of requests to match from guys, and guys who aren't like 10 out of 10 gigachads are lucky to get any actual girls to try to match with them first. In fact, you're more likely to get catfishers, like I mentioned earlier. This causes a dynamic in which women are very spoiled for choice, which means that they get to be pickier. You get disgusting disparities like this example here. Not to mention, when women get so many choices, it also leads to things being more casual and perhaps even cheating instead of developing a lifelong bond. Online dating really is a mess, man. Some of the early online dating websites are ones like Match.com or eHarmony. Sometimes there are some that are made for specific groups like Christian Mingle for Christians or JDate for Jews, but it seems like Tinder and social media sites are where most of these happen these days, except for the specific use case ones. Simp. While simp was originally a shortening of the term simpleton, and then being used in the 80s by rappers to mean someone soft or overly sympathetic, these days it's a term to describe when a man becomes a white knight or an orbiter of a girl. E-girls tend to get a lot of simps. When a guy is acting extremely submissive to her and way too into her, he is said to be simping. Look, just go into any hot streamer's chat on Twitch and you'll see simps lined up for the door, especially chat mods. Those are the worst kinds of simps. A simp will often donate a lot of money to said girl, like this screenshot here. In any case, simps are very often mocked, like these images here, and you'll often see simps defending their own behavior as just being nice to a lady, when you know damn well what they're doing.
Also, can someone explain me why people don't like, what do you call it?
Donated $2. Stay legendary, Pokey.
Poggers, thank you. Anywho's. What about cursing?
Officer K donated $600. I love you, please be my girlfriend.
Etsy. Etsy is a website where you can buy very specialized goods, like handmade goods, or goods that are just designed by an individual creator. It began in 2005, and ever since 2013, sellers can actually sell mass manufactured items. They actually did really well in the pandemic with handmade face masks, accounting for 11% of gross merchandise sold in the third quarter, which is pretty nuts, right? In any case, I've bought a few things there, like a mask themed after a character I liked during COVID, for example. I bought a gift or two from there that were simple things like that. I remember when I was going to be playing a PS2 game called Resident Evil Dead Aim, or as it's known in Japan, Gun Survivor 4, Biohazard, Heroes Never Die, which is a much cooler title. But that's a light gun game. I wasn't going to buy a light gun, nor was I going to play this with just a controller. But instead, it allows you to use a mouse in one hand and the analog stick in the other. So I played like that. But the PS2 needed a USB 1.0 mouse, which is not something I had. An Etsy seller sold me one. The game was pretty fun, by the way. I also have a Dreamcast I wanted to play some games on, and I found an Etsy seller who would burn games onto discs, so I bought some. To me, my first thoughts for a product are Walmart and Amazon, then eBay and Etsy. I use eBay for used or niche goods, and Etsy for new niche goods, or just really unique goods.
Turn off that pesky ad block. 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 Turn off that pesky ad block.
Ad blockers. Ad blockers are browser extensions or separate programs that you use to block ads and other undesirable features from a website. And if you have a slower internet connection, ad blockers will save bandwidth for what you actually care about, not spending bandwidth on ads. The first ad block was called Internet Fast Forward on Netscape Navigator, and a popular one I had back in the day was called AdBlock Plus. These days, the one to use is called uBlock Origin. It's a fantastic tool that filters so much website junk, even more than just ads, but I use Firefox. If you use Chrome, which most of you do, then you unfortunately have the cucked version called uBlock Origin Lite. Chrome had a particularly nasty update in 2024 that was made to curb how extensions can be used, including ad blockers. One reason in a long list of anti-consumer practices are why I don't use Chrome, but that's neither here nor there. If you've never heard of ad blockers before, you should download one and experience the internet in the way you've really not seen in decades. It will be night and day, trust me, you won't regret it. If you've heard of them and aren't using one of these right now, what are you doing? Did you not listen to my advice in the malware/viruses entry from the last video? Don't worry, I'm not monetized yet, so if you do see any ads, I don't get anything from them. So you don't need to worry about the support from me yet. At least not yet. Hopefully I get there one day and you can consider turning it off when you want to support me, but I'm at that stage at which a creator gets to be honest and give actual advice without being biased with a financial incentive. Like how I could recommend Sponsor Block in the sponsors entry, or play a clip that talked shit about Raid Shadow Legends in their entry earlier when you know damn well many YouTubers wouldn't because they're a lucrative sponsor. Who knows, maybe I'll regret it later, but if I can get any perks about being a tiny YouTuber, if there are any perks to being a tiny YouTuber that is, it's that I get to be more honest. I don't make any money on here outside of what you guys donate on buymeacoffee.com, link in the description, so what do I have to lose with being honest? Now that went kind of off the rails there, let's get back on topic. In any case, ad blockers are one of the most useful tools on the internet to make your browsing experience tolerable. And if you use it along with Sponsor Block, like I mentioned in the sponsors entry, YouTube becomes a streamlined website that is a lot of fun to browse. Before I go to the next entry, if you're following on the iceberg, you'll notice that the next one is public freakouts, but you may not have noticed this last time because I didn't point it out, but in the last video, I actually did skip Coppa, but the reason was not because I forgot it, although maybe in the future I'll forget an entry and I appreciate anybody telling me, but because I don't want to do intros anymore, I want to start out just in an entry, but it's better to start off not with my voice. So I usually try to find a really good video that I can lure in, kind of like what I did in the last video with Who Is This 4chan? And in this video, all the Coppa compilation stuff. Next video, I'm gonna start the video off with an angry public freakout video. So right now, I'm gonna skip to the next entry, and in the future, I'll make sure to mention if I skip any. So if I don't mention that I'm skipping something, you can go ahead and point it out in the comments. That means I probably forgot it. Role-playing. Do you remember the GTA Online entry and how I talked about roleplay servers? You know, where you pretend to be an actual person in the GTA world with an actual job and life? That's what role-playing, or RPing, is. The idea of role-playing has a long history before the internet with things like plays and acting, but to fast forward a lot to more modern times, an early modern form of this was tabletop role-playing games, or TTRPGs like Dungeons and Dragons and such, that are still popular forms of roleplay. And these have even moved to the internet with platforms like Tabletop Simulator that I'll link in the description, allowing you to play from home with your group, and there are others like that as well. The 4chan board Traditional Games, or TG, is a place I've been to a few times to learn a thing or two about these. It's kind of an interesting board. There's even a large content creation sphere around tabletop RPGs. For example, members of HoloLive English have done TTRPG streams before that can be pretty entertaining, and I'll link a playlist of this from Morty that features all of HoloMyth, or there are some others with some other HoloEN members like Fauna, Bibu, and Gigi in this playlist here. I'll link all playlists in the description. Another way you've probably heard of role-playing is from role-playing video games, aka RPGs. This genre is so vast that it's one of the most important video game genres. Some popular Japanese ones would be the Final Fantasy series, the Kingdom Hearts series, the Dragon Quest series, the whole Megami Tensei series. Shin Megami Tensei and the Persona series all put into that umbrella. There's the Soulsborne series, which I actually recently played for the first time and beat all of them, etc. Popular Western ones would be the Elder Scrolls series, the Ultima series, the Fallout series, Baldur's Gate, that series, Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, which is an underrated one, but I wanted to mention it anyway. There's the Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic series, etc. Heck, this genre of video games is so popular that there are super popular ones not made in the West or Japan, like the Witcher series, which is Polish, or Disco Elysium, which was led by an Estonian, etc. On top of this, RPGs have a ton of subgenres and variations in them, like massively multiplayer online RPGs, or MMORPGs, or just MMOs, like World of Warcraft or WoW. There's RuneScape, there's Final Fantasy XIV. There's also tactical RPGs, like the Fire Emblem series, or Valkyria Chronicles, etc. Because of how popular this genre of video games has become, and how vast the selection is, there's a lot of online content made about these games. And since RPGs tend to be complex compared to your average games, it can lead to videos about them going in pretty high depth, and there's also a decent amount of creators who use these for challenge runs, since RPGs are perfect for those. Some channels I would recommend for this are Niarly, who does a lot of Megami Tensei challenge runs, or JK Leeds, who does a ton of Soulsborne challenge runs. And if you want a channel to which someone goes in depth about a game like this, I would recommend Illusory Wall for some of the most in-depth Dark Souls game mechanics analysis I've ever seen. Or another one is Star Run for a similar thing to Illusory Wall with the Dark Souls franchise. All these channels will be linked in the description. However, tabletop RPGs and RPG video game content is not really what this entry was intended to be, I bet. Instead, I presume it's about a different kind of online roleplay. Well, if we're talking about these, there are 4 main kinds of online RP that I've noticed. Number 1, you're impersonating a celebrity or some kind of meme account, which is an entry for later, in which you're in character of whatever the account's about. You're simply doing this just for fun though, and a common form of this is a Twitter account like this, and even Twitter accounts have the parody tag just for these now. Number 2, you're impersonating someone or pretending to be a made-up person to catfish, as we discussed before, which obviously you have bad intentions to be role-playing here. Number 3, you're in a community like a forum or a chat room in which the members pretend to be characters of a media property. Those in this category just have fun with the idea of getting to flesh out the characters in a way they think fits, and it also gives them a method of escapism. And finally, number 4. These are like number 3, except they're doing it to get their rocks off. You know what I mean by that, right? This is called erotic roleplay, or ERP, which is an entry for later, which has a very unfortunate acronym, since ERP is also a term for enterprise resource planning, which is a whole thing that you use in businesses, and, well, you're talking about ERP a lot in businesses, and it doesn't mean erotic roleplay, so it kinda makes younger people laugh. And that's gonna close out this episode of the Gigantic Internet Iceberg. This was part 3 of Tier 1. Thanks again to Dullboy for his contribution on buymeacoffee.com/deepdiveotaku. Link is in the description. If you yourself would like to support the channel and get a shout out in the next video, consider contributing. All support is appreciated. And if you liked the video, please make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to be alerted of when the next video comes out. There's going to be a lot of parts of this series, so you're going to want to subscribe and hit the bell icon to know when the next one comes out. I do also have a Twitter account linked in the description if you'd like to follow me there. And finally, this series does have a playlist linked in the description so you can watch every episode in order. God bless and have a great rest of your day.